Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa, where only the strongest roots see the light. Brought to you by Botánica Candles and More. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please like the video and be sure to subscribe. Different concept today, guys, because we're always seeing a bunch of things online, and Erica's always telling me what's going on. And then apart from that, we get a bunch of questions that we might not be able to make a full video about. So we're coming today with frequently asked questions.
These are really cool because we probably see these on every single episode.
Yeah.
Even though it's not really relevant to whatever episode was released, but these are questions that a lot of people have. So it's cool that we're going to do a little video where we're going to answer frequently asked questions.
Absolutely, and I can't wait because, we always want to stay up to date with the times as well. We have timeless concepts like the orishas and things that go into our ceremony, but there's new things that come up all the time. And we want to make sure, we're able to feed you guys the knowledge you need to make the decisions you have to.
All right. Well, speaking of feeding, you ready for this buffet of questions here?
Please. I love freestyling.
All right. So you haven't seen these questions yet.
No, I haven't. That's how I live my life, Phil.
All right. Start calling you Vin Diesel. I live my life one question at a time, one quarter mile at a time. All right. So here we go. Why was I told not to kneel in front of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏?
Oh, I love that one. So that's actually a two-part question. Someone asked that recently, and it's interesting because some people say, well, Baba, Ifa contradicts itself. It tells us to do one thing in one sign, but it tells us not to do the same thing in another sign. It's not that Ifa contradicts itself. I think Ifa gives us options, and it's also about knowing what to do and when to do it. So in the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, this is the reason why, well, maybe actually I'm going to start with the reason why we shouldn't and then the reason why we should, right? In the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 was where Ifa speaks of a time when the kings and the babalawos wouldn't sit down to eat, right? And they started noticing things weren't going well. And they went for divination. The 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 was revealed, where Ifa said that we're meant to eat sitting down, especially if we're initiated or in a place of position and stature. They started incorporating this, but the reason they wouldn't beforehand is because when they would make the offerings to 𝘃𝗶𝗱, they would kneel. They wouldn't sit. They would stand and things like that. And what would occur is that 𝘃𝗶𝗱 would try to manipulate them into kneeling and things like that to be able to take advantage of them. Because when we're in a kneeling position, automatically our head goes down. And that's when 𝘃𝗶𝗍𝗏 is in a superior state. So 𝘃𝗶 would force the people of influence, specifically the babalaos or the olorisha initiates, to do this. And this would cause a lot of issues because they wouldn't be able to think correctly, or they felt cloudy, or, 𝘃𝗶 was dominating their train of thought and doing his mischief, as he's known, to kind of put them in a precarious state to do what he wanted rather than what they wanted, thus causing them to not be able to eat and not be very productive. So when Orunmila found out about this and Olodumare found out about this, they said, hey, they can't kneel in front of you no more because you don't know how to handle it. And 𝘃𝗶 was like, oh man. But that's one of the reasons why we don't. Now, in the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, it speaks of a story where 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 first manifested. And some people say that 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 is actually the character or archetype that represents Jesus within our scripture. And he was told to perform sacrifice in heaven, which he did with the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏. And then when he was born, he came with the same 𝗃. And he was told to perform sacrifice to have this huge following, which he did in heaven. But when he got to the ripe age of 33, he somehow arrived in Orunmila's home once more, where he received his hand of Ifa. And Ifa told him to perform sacrifice to 𝘃𝗶𝗱 and to also provide an act of humility or homage to 𝘃𝗶𝗱 to align with him so that 𝘃𝗶𝗱 would protect him, apart from the goat offering that he was asking for. And 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 declined for two reasons. One, for socially. If people saw him making offerings to this deity, he was going to lose his whole following. Orunmila quickly told him, we could do this in private, but he declined. And then the other aspect was, he said, I only believe in one God. I only believe in God, my Father. And 𝘃𝗶𝗱 looked at him and said, boy, even your God kneels to me. Even your father kneels to me. and everybody does. Everybody that has a head kneels to 𝗪𝗪 somehow, because our head at any given moment goes down and in all these different directions. And at the end of the day, no matter what spirituality you practice, there's an archetype that represents 𝗪𝗪, whether it's Lucifer, whether it's 𝗪𝗪, whether it's, I don't know who, but or Hermes in Greek mythology, whatever, he's there. So ultimately, because of that, 𝗪𝗪, not taking kindly to 𝗀𝗪𝗃's insult, penetrated the brain of his best friend Judas, and caused Judas to betray Jesus. And that's why they found him in the garden and took him to ultimately be executed. But after that occurred, when 𝗪𝗪 relinquished Judas's mind, Judas had a moment of actualization where he's like, why did I just betray the man I love the most, my best friend? And that's when Judas committed suicide. So that's the literature we have. So here's the thing. When you look at 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃, it says that we don't kneel in front of 𝗪𝗪 because he might take advantage of us, or it might be overstimulating to the point where he starts staying in that superior position, causing things to kind of go haywire with us. And that's also the act of why we sit down when we eat. And a lot of people actually take care of the warriors in 𝗪𝗪 when they sit down, But then again, you look at 𝗵𝗸𝗃 where 𝗪𝗪 asked 𝗀𝗪𝗃 to genuflect, which ironically they do quite a bit in most places of worship, and he chose not to. And it ended very negatively for not only him, but everybody that was associated with him. So once again, we're kind of at this point within Ifa, what do we do? I kneel in front of 𝗪𝗪 personally. But being that I'm getting a little older, I don't know, I don't kneel that much. But I'm not terrified if I do, just like I'm not terrified if I blow a whistle in front of 𝗪𝗪 either and think he's going to leave the house.
Well, hold on.
Is that one of them?
That's the very next question.
Oh, God, man.
Can I whistle in front of 𝗪𝗪? So go ahead, my brother.
Everything in moderation. So that kind of went over the kneeling aspect. But when we talk about the whistling aspect, once again, there's two schools of thought where people kind of get, confused, like, Baba, what do we do? So why don't we, they say? In the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁, it speaks of when 𝗪𝗪 wanted to become a Babalawo, and Olodumare said, I'll do it to you, or allow you to go into the 𝗵𝗠𝗏 if you can find me in the jungle. And Olodumare started playing with 𝗪𝗪's mind. Like, he would whistle, making 𝗪𝗪 think he was to the left when he was to the right. And, he really played with 𝗪𝗪's mind very heavily and very negatively there. To the point where 𝗪𝗪 became frustrated. And, extreme versions say 𝗪𝗪 was going to kill himself over this. So Shango saw what was happening and asked him what was going on. And 𝗪𝗪 said, I'm trying to find this guy. He's trying to interrupt my destiny. I'm kind of losing it. And that's where 𝗪𝗪 and Shango went back to back, and Shango said, this way we'll be able to see him, and then he has to do Ifa to both of us, which pretty quickly they found him. And Olodumare had to initiate both of them. But that's one version why the whistling really tormented 𝗪𝗪, right? The reason you can whistle in front of 𝗪𝗪 is in the Odu of 𝗃𝗀𝗎𝗍, where they were doing an Odu Abaye, right, or a letter of the year, and Olodumare told them to let him know what the Odu was once it was revealed. But the Babalawos wanted to manipulate Olodumare and have him do things based on what they wanted. So they said when they did the divination, 𝗃𝗀𝗎𝗍 came out, but they were going to tell Olodumare it was 𝗿𝗃𝗀, which was the sign that's backwards. And before they were able to get there and say the results, 𝗪𝗪 went running, whistling. This is the Odu of the whistleblower. The first whistleblower was 𝗪𝗪. And, when he came into the palace, he ran to Olodumare and said, they're going to tell you it's 𝗿𝗃𝗀. It was really 𝗃𝗀𝗎𝗍. And Olodumare said, all right, let's see. When the Babalaos came in, they started chanting 𝗿𝗃𝗀. And Olodumare, basically looked at them and started laughing and said, wow, you guys are all traitors. And 𝗃𝗀𝗎 said, why don't you tell him that, it was really 𝗃𝗀𝗎𝗍 that came out? And, the Babalaos started quivering, and Olodumare had them all executed for lying. And, that's why you're able to whistle in front of 𝗪𝗪 as well. So once again, what do we do? What don't we do? I think it's going to take a little more than a whistle to excommunicate or remove the spirituality of 𝗪𝗪 from someone's house or infuriate him. But I wouldn't overdo it neither. You know, I wouldn't be playing the whistle song per se. But even then, it's not that big of an issue. But, you know, it's speaking more about ceremonial context. Like, you know, I wouldn't overdo it while thinking about it. Like, yeah, this bothers Eshu. I'm just going to keep whistling. But I don't think it's going to have huge negative ramifications per se. But these are the two, you know, stories and odus that speak about it, just like with the kneeling thing.
Is there a certain whistle in particular, or just...
I don't know. I've heard it's not a referee whistle, I don't think. But you know, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, in Hialeah, people would whistle because there was nothing else to do. I mean, you just see people like, and then, you know, you talk about Cuban culture, everything's a whistle. You know, when you want to call your kid to come in at home at night, you know, I can't whistle. But you know, there's people that are gifted like that. Imagine if the guy who was the human flute had issue, you know? There's a guy that, you know, could mimic a flute with his whistling. You know, Eshu would have lost his mind there, you know, but, you know, I'm sure there's worse things. But everything in moderation, you know, and then always, you know, refer back to your house, you know.
All right. This one is, can a non-priest learn and recite the Mojuba?
Technically, yes. I don't recommend it. Not because necessarily anything negative is going to happen, but there's so many other things to study before initiation. The reason you see that in 𝘃𝗵𝗱𝗲, you know, the 𝗵𝗂𝗍 and things are given much more, you know, easily, is because that is the language that, you know, ultimately that spirituality is carried out in. It's in Yoruba. So, for example, an uninitiated person in Nigeria could wake up and say, you know, 𝗵𝗂 Ọlọ́run, you know, praises to the sun. It's not that they're necessarily saying that 𝗵𝗂, they're just, you know, giving homage or being thankful at that moment. So those are the same things we could accomplish in any language. Let's say someone's a speaker, you know, they speak Arabic. You could say your 𝗵𝗂 in Arabic, you know, before you're initiated. It doesn't take so much process. Where the 𝗵𝗂 or the Mojuba becomes much more pertinent or necessary is when we're going towards initiation, because in ceremonial context, the only language that should be spoken ceremonially is Yoruba, you know. And some people feel differently or adverse to that no, you can practice Ifa ceremonially in any language. You know, I've seen people recite a whole verse in Yoruba and then recite it in English. I personally don't see the need for it, but, you know, at the end of the day, if you want to be a part of a house that does that, please, by all means. But at the end of the day, within ceremony, it should be Yoruba, you know. And you should know what you're saying, of course. I'm not saying that you have to recite it in your native tongue at that moment, or even in general. Like, for example, I'll pray a prayer, and luckily I studied it with translations. I have a basic gist of what I'm saying, and, you know, I can say it then with passion. But it's not that I know every single word or I remember it from when I was studying, because that's really inconsequential. You know, do you know what you're saying for the most part? Are you providing the, you know, the energy that goes with that? And then, you know, we get really great results. So I don't see the need.
All right, here we go. What can I learn before priesthood in Lukumi?
Quite a bit, you know, and I actually went through this because I've been wanting to crown 𝗃𝗍 since I was like 11. You know, I first found out about Ifa when I was like, I think 8. So by the time I was 11, or maybe even before then, I don't remember, I was like, man, I want to crown Oshun. Or not Oshun, just crown 𝗃𝗍, because I didn't know Oshun was the one I was meant to be initiated into. But I really occupied my time because I realized like this money was going to take a minute to come up with, and I didn't want to get there and not know anything. So the big thing I learned was songs. The music is allowed to be listened to and learned by everybody, at least the music that happens outside of the room. The popular music, you know, the top 40 of Ifa Orisha. Herbs, learning about plants to a certain degree. Culture, history. Another big thing is the language. You can learn the language as much as you want because that's a language. What you cannot learn, I think, is even more important to know is ceremonial process within the room. That is unnecessary. And, you know, what I tell people is if you're really motivated, you know, it'll help you come up with what you need to quicker to be able to get in there quicker, because there's really no replacement for the knowledge that is within the room. It's to the point where I've even thought, or people have asked me, better said, Baba, can you come out with recordings of, you know, the room? And I've never done it just because I'm too scared of it getting into the wrong hands and then being the guy that released it. So if you want to learn the room is where you need to be. But before then, you could learn music, herbs. You could have a real good sense of what you're learning. And then the beautiful thing is all of those things are going to be applicable to when you get your license. Like all the songs you learn, you can sing them when you're sacrificing or interacting with the orisha. The herbs, you're going to use them in ceremony. Like all the language, all of vocabulary, all of these things are going to be applicable so that you'll have a nice philosophical base to be able to combine with your practicality once you learn process.
When you say the room, what do you mean?
So the room of initiation or any room. Like for example, if we're going to initiate a 𝗲𝗹𝗶𝗲𝗃, the stuff that goes on in that room, there's aspects of it that you'll understand, like by songs and things like that beforehand. Like, for example, if we're in an Ifa and we're feeding 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, you could learn the songs of 𝘃𝗶𝗱 before then because that's a public process. But what happens inside the room, no.
Okay.
Same thing with orisha or any other process where there's a white curtain and a mariwo.
All right. This one is about women.
Okay, awesome.
Can women sacrifice animals? And this is a two-parter. And before or after menopause?
Neither.
Okay.
So there's two stories. In the Odu of 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗍𝗔 was where women wanted to start sacrificing animals because they didn't want to pay the 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗍s to do it for them. Or they were married to 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗍s, but they didn't want to, accommodate to their husband's schedule for what they wanted done. So they took it upon themselves to take the knife and start sacrificing in a ceremonial context. Now, this does not apply to the tia that's in Puerto Rico somewhere with a hen and is ripping its head off to make sancocho. God bless that woman. Please don't interrupt. But this is more referring to, I'm going to take a rooster and give it to 𝘃𝗶𝗍, things like that. So what happened is women started realizing that they started hemorrhaging from their private parts. And this was a big issue. And they said it went on for 7 days before they went and visited the 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗍 for divination, or 𝗲𝗏𝗏 specifically, because they didn't want to go to their husbands because they didn't want to admit to anything. So when divination was performed, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏 was revealed, and 𝗲𝗏𝗏 looked at them and said, have you guys been doing something you're not supposed to be? And they said, well, we've been sacrificing because these guys, and they want to tell us what to do. And, and 𝗲𝗏𝗏 said, you guys are the creators. You guys are the givers of life. You are not allowed to sacrifice anything ceremonially in any spirituality, especially Africa. And the reason being is because the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗁𝗏, or the elders of the night, or the witches, as they're belovedly known, were becoming angry with the women because they were used to the men doing it. And they had given the posterity of the men to be able to do that function for them, being that they interacted with them better. So when the women started, being that they were going against their natural function within nature, the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗏 became bloodthirsty and started causing them to hemorrhage to be able to devour them. Whereas opposed men are the destroyers of nature. We have more muscle mass to be able to, ultimately exterminate. So they quickly asked 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗏, well, what's the solution here? He said, you can never sacrifice again. You have to give that role to the men. This is why the orisha process of pinadu is, in my humble opinion, unnecessary, because women are never meant to hold a knife ceremonially ever, right? And that ceremony, and you're still going to suffer this 7 days every time the moon changes. So it's where menstruation was born. And the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗁𝗏 reside within the coagulations of menstruation that ultimately exit through menses. So that's one reason why women cannot sacrifice ceremonially. The other reason is in the Odu of Ogunnache was where there was a 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗏 who was Ogunnache, and his wife was a little bit jealous. And he would go into the jungle at night to be able to interact with the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗏, to be able to make 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 and things like that, where it's ideally done at that time. But she thought he was being unfaithful. So one day she decided to follow him into the grove. And the more she stepped into the grove, she noticed that she started hemorrhaging. And they say she took 7 steps too close. Ooh. And when that occurred, the husband was doing an offering to the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗏, as was his position. And the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗏 said, you betrayed me. And he's like, no, I would never do that. They were like, well, why is your wife here then? And when he looked back, because the 𝗃𝗏𝗎𝗏 smelled her. And he looked back. He said, "What in the world are you doing here?" She's like, "No, I wanted to make sure you were being faithful to me." And he said, "You have no idea what you've done." And the 𝗀𝗲𝗎 said, as long as she doesn't step further, she won't die. But she needs to start stepping backwards and exit the grove. And she took 7 steps backwards and it ended, you know. Once again, the 7 days of menses that happen monthly for women, but they separated. You know, the Babalawo couldn't deal with the shame, and the 𝗀𝗎𝗎 said, if you want to live and you want to interact with us, you can't be with her no more. So that's why when women sacrifice within any of these contexts, Ifa says that they learn. It says that if they sacrifice or read information or interact with information they're not supposed to, a couple things are going to happen. They're going to lose their marriage. They're going to, God forbid, lose their children. And they could lose their mind, right? Ifa says that there's certain roles for everybody, but sacrifice or interaction with information that is not privy has to be respected and at a distance, because it could have very negative effects. And I've seen it. You know, people, you know, certain people that go through certain processes, you know, like the 𝗃𝗏𝗏 and things like that. Like, I haven't seen good effects from that. You know, and it's like, it's not just applicable to women. It's anybody that's sacrificing that's not supposed to be, is an issue. So any initiated man, whether it be olorisha or babalawo, can sacrifice animals. You know, and the olorisha, the male olorisha, doesn't need 𝗃𝗏𝗏 to do this either, frankly and humbly. The only people who have a knife right is us, the babalawos, through our 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 process. But that doesn't give us the right to sacrifice. That has a whole different connotation. The olorisha, just like the babalawo, is born with the right to sacrifice, you know, once they know how to do it correctly and humanely as possible, you know. So the short, long, short answer is no.
Okay. How you feel about pigeons? This isn't a question, but it kind of relates to one of them.
I think pigeons are great, bro. As long as it's not the ones in New York that attack you and eat meat. I'll never forget, I was in the Bronx when I first got with Erica. She's like, let's go home. So
oh gosh,
we were over there in the over there off of 3rd Avenue. And you know, her uncle, who's lived over there for like 40, 50 years, he's like, let's go get a hot dog. A dirty water dog, as he says. And I'm like, all right, let's rock. So we went down to the corner, and you know, I mean, this is one of the most amazing hot dogs I've ever had in my life.
Just some bread.
Yeah, straight up with a little mustard. That's all me. And he's like, I think I'm done. I'm like, Theo, there's no garbage or nothing like that. He's like, no, watch this. And he throws the hot dog at these. Yo, if you were to give these type of pigeons to the orishas would be drenched. I'm talking about a pigeon like this. And he threw it at the pigeon, and the pigeon ate the hot dog, bro. I swear to God.
You ever seen a pigeon with diabetes?
Oh my God. Yo, like the front, the neck, like the neck goes one way, and oh my God. I said but that's uptown, yo. They're built different, you know?
Wow. Okay. Well, this question is loosely related to that. It just says,
God.
Can the children of 𝗃𝗏𝗏 clean themselves with the pigeon?
They can clean themselves with the pigeon, Dove body wash. They can clean themselves with whatever they want. What happens with the pigeon is, in the 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 of 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏 was where 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was being born, and they were trying to come up with a process to be able to facilitate his birth. And obviously it spoke of the goat and the rooster, which were much more commonplace, but he felt like he was missing something. Divination was performed. 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗏 was prescribed to 𝘄𝗫 with a white dove, and it was sacrificed to him, right? He cleaned himself with it, he ate it, it was sacrificed, etc. And he said, from this day forward, whenever I'm born, or if my children ever want to receive my blessing, it's through this animal. There is no issue with the pigeon. I really don't understand. Now, there are certain pataquis that say that 𝘄𝗫 was allergic, or, you know, he didn't like it. All of those are really trumped by 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, because 𝘄𝗫 didn't even want to come into the world and harmonize until he had the baptism of the white dove or the pigeon or any of its derivatives. So in my opinion, I have 2 children of 𝘄𝗫 within my home. My son Danny is crowned, and my daughter Allie is not, but she has 𝘃𝗶𝗱. And they've cleaned themselves with pigeons multiple times. I've fed their 𝘄𝗫's pigeon multiple times, and they're doing just fine. Another big polemic thing is the guinea hen. You know, 𝘄𝗫 and the guinea hen. There's an Odu known as 𝗃𝗏𝗹𝗁, And in 𝗃𝗏𝗶𝗶 is where everybody cleaned themselves and ate from the guinea hen, but 𝘃𝗏 wasn't there. But that doesn't mean 𝘃𝗏 had an issue with it, because if you look at the Odu of Okana and Ikakana, 𝘃𝗏 consumed it. So once again, it says one thing, it says another. Whatever you do is fine, but it's not that anybody's going to die, or you can, like, for example, if I'm working an Orisha process and a child of 𝘃𝗏 tells me, hey, Baba, I don't clean myself with the guinea hen, I'm like, all right, Papi, that's fine, not an issue. Or if someone's like, no, clean me, all right, I'll clean you. It's just a matter of knowing why or why not. The problem is, I think certain people haven't studied enough or interacted with enough information to have those kind of, that open-mindedness to understand. It's not that anything's wrong. It's just that you need to know why or why you're not doing something. And I think being that people don't have that, some people are quick to try to chastise others and be like, oh, you can't do that, or that was wrong. Or, when you hear somebody saying that was wrong, you have to begin to question their level of knowledge and acumen, because as I've gotten older in Ifa, I wonder what's wrong. Like, there's very few things that are absolutely wrong, like certain taboos, but things like this, I mean, there's nothing 𝘃𝗏 doesn't eat. The only thing that 𝘃𝗏 is not a fan of per se is black palm oil, which is adin. So I don't see an issue with 𝘃𝗏 eating anything per se.
Now, when you say clean, what's the actual process?
The process of 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗍𝗃, which is basically, it's almost like an aura cleaning or like a static electricity cleaning. It was identified in the 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗏𝗃 𝗀𝗃𝗍𝗃. And basically, the person spins counterclockwise in place at a moderate pace, nothing fast. And the professional basically holding the bird by the feet with the wings open begins to allow the feathers to the wings to flap upon the person and clean the person. And then at that point, the ideology is that now that animal has assumed any static and frequency or negativity that the person may have had around them, and then we sacrifice it to the Orisha, so the Orisha can then take responsibility or that weight and relinquish it from the person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yes, sir.
All right, can you discuss the Santeria and why is it sacred?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different Odus, but the main one that we have to go back to is in the Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 or 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 or 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃. And what occurred there was, in that Odu, people wouldn't cleanse themselves before going on the mat, which is, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's a mat. It's a straw mat, I guess. And they would keep their shoes on. They wouldn't bathe. They would eat and not clean up. And it was really filthy. And they went for divination because they started feeling bad, or sickness, an epidemic was happening. 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 was revealed, where Ifa said that they needed to respect the spirituality of the mat, being that it provided them a place to sleep, a place to eat, a place to procreate, a place to divine, being that the shell and the chain are thrown on top of it, or the king divination happens on top of it. And that's why in that Odu, it was identified that, we take our shoes off before stepping on the mat, or we always try to maintain the mat clean because it serves all of these functions to us. In the Odu of 𝗶𝗶𝗍𝗶, it actually speaks of when the mat didn't perform sacrifice, and that's why the chair or the king sat on top of it and had to tolerate it. It's also where the mat didn't perform sacrifice, and things like the 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 and the cowrie shell and 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 did. That's why Orunmila sits on top, or the Olorisha sits on top of the mat to be able to perform all of their divination rites. It's in the Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 where things started sitting down on top of the mat. So yeah.
Is the word Santeria, what does that translate to?
𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 basically means straw mat. In Yoruba, it's eni, right? That's why if you look at the title of Oriate, it's Obayani Oriate, which means the king who sits on the mat. Obayani Oriate, or the king that sits on the mat that will reveal the head that's on the ate, which is another on the tray. It's kind of interchangeable though. Like, you'll see those two words kind of thrown back and forth, eni and ate. But the thing is, ate really refers a little bit more towards the tray of Ifa. So that title is a little more of a comulgation, where in reality, the Oriate should be known as 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 Orisha, right? Or 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, or he who assists, or serves or attends to. So, but it's all right. But eni or ate,
Okay. All right. Next question is, what is medio asiento?
Oh.
And this is, does Odu speak of this concept? Did I say it correctly?
You said it right. I wish the words didn't exist at all.
Oh. All right.
Yeah. So what happens is this, right? Crowning costs a lot of money. Initiating into any of these things costs a lot of money. It's not cheap. So that can be very frustrating for somebody, especially for somebody who wants to get involved or do it. So what happened is there was this innovation that happened that I'm not a fan of, to give people this like position or this thing where, you know, it's almost like a fake accolade.
Stolen valor?
I guess so. Where, you know, a bunch of things were thrown together and it was given a name. It's almost like, not that this takes away from that degree. This is just the best analogy I can think of. You know, when you get a degree in humanities and you just study a bunch of random things and then they put it in one degree and be like, okay, here's a degree.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't necessarily focus upon anything. So medio asiento is kind of like that, but not even to the level of the humanities degree. So what happens is for the spiritual houses who give collares or 𝗃𝗍𝗃, right, or the first 5 necklaces, if you have that, if you have your warriors from an Orisha standpoint with the rock of 𝗃𝗏𝗃 and 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, because they say that 𝗃𝗏𝗃 is the antesala of the Orisha process, or the living room before you go into the room of Orisha. Once you have those things, you're medio asiento, or you're halfway to sitting down or being crowned. This is a complete innovation. This is a complete just form of expression, because there is no Odu anywhere whatsoever that speaks about these combination of things being an initiation or a rank. You know, like you'll see some people come up and, you know, I'm incapable. I don't critique anybody, you know, because if you're not my godchild, I just don't get involved like that. But they'll come up and be like, no, I have medio asiento. You know, for somebody that really understands this, you know, process, they're kind of looking at that like, okay, you really don't have anything then. I mean, other than what you've received. But medio asiento makes no sense to a certain degree, because the same necklaces you received in medio asiento, you could have received just asentándote, or actually doing orisha. So it's a complete conundrum, you know. And technically, you're not medio asiento until you have your hand of Ifa, because the first half of the Orisha process, to a certain degree, is your hand of Ifa, because what Orisha are we going to crown? You don't have 𝗪𝗪, you don't have 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃. Without 𝗪𝗪 and 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, no one should arrive at the room of Orisha, so you're not even halfway there, you know, in my opinion. You might be, you know, 5% of the way there, because 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 is really the determining factor there. So it's not real. It's real because people mention it and have it per se, but it's not founded upon anything legitimate with Ifa. No Odus.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've been studying for a long time, bro. I've never.
So why is this question in particular a frequently asked one?
Because a lot of people pay for this. You know, you got people paying.
Well, that's phony though, right?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, like when somebody, and I would never ridicule anybody. That's not who I am. But you know, when someone, and I feel bad because the person that went through the process, they don't know any better. So they're proud of it. They're like, wow, I came up with thousands of dollars to receive these things. And, you know, my elder told me to say I have medio asiento, yo soy medio asentado. And, you know, someone such as myself hears that and it's like, but that's just a mishmash or a cornucopia of a bunch of things that they just do together. It was almost like a package, but it really doesn't mean anything. I mean, other than the benefits you got from the orishas that were probably given, but it doesn't. It's not like when you receive hand of Ifa and you're owofakang, or you have hand of Ifa and a woman, you're 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗃𝗃, or you have orisha crown, you're orisha or babalawo. Like there's no name for that. You know, technically, you're still an aleyo. You're still a visitor to the house. We don't know who you are yet. And you know, you have terms like aborisha, which is another one that kind of applies to that, but 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃, from what I understand, is just a practitioner to a certain degree, but you haven't formalized things to the point where you have hand of Ifa or anything like that. Your first rank is hand of Ifa. That's the first step in the religion, period. So.
Okay. I have a question that's not on the list here.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure people probably have asked you this 70 million times. Though.
Maybe.
Which one's the best Orisha?
Oh, come on, Phil. What are you talking about? The best Orisha is the one that, man, the best Orisha, they're all amazing. They're all amazing. And as you go through and you take time to get to know each of them and know what they represent to each of us. Remember, we're all composed of all the Orishas. The human body is composed of 401 different energies of Orisha. You know, to be here, we are the descendants of these primordial ancestors. The best Orisha is the one that you're taking care of at that moment, the one that's helping you, the one that you're helping, right? Your guardian Orisha is above all, you know. Oshun to me is my focus, in conjunction with Orumila. But the best Orisha is your Orisha, you know what I'm saying? Or the Orisha that's helping you at that moment, you know what I'm saying? And each Odu has different ones that they kind of interact with. Like, for example, I love Obanani, but she doesn't speak in my sign pretty much at all, right? So it's nothing against her. I got love for her, but, you know, I mean, Eshu is kind of on a different level for me. You know what I'm saying? Shango is on a different level for me. Obatala, Ogun, Osain, you know, Odua. Like, everybody's sign is different and interacts with different energies in a different way, but the best Orisha is the one that's helping you and that you're showing love to and getting results from at that moment. But ultimately, your guardian Orisha and Orumila, you know, your ancestors, Egun, you know, they're all great.
Okay. Is that a question that you get?
No, I think people are afraid of the answer. I think people are afraid to ask it. You know, because you don't want to make, I don't think the Orishas necessarily get mad, but, you know, if somebody asks you that, you better say your guardian Orisha. So I'm going to say Oshun, just because I'm a son of Oshun. I don't want no pressure. You know?
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yes, sir.
We got, can children of Shango initiate children of Oya?
Absolutely.
Oshun and or Ogun and vice versa.
Absolutely. Any Orisha, within the Lukumi Afro-Cuban system of Santeria, anybody can initiate anybody. So whatever issues those Orishas had when they were interacting has nothing to do with us. For example, when my grandmother would argue with her sister and they wouldn't talk for a couple months, that was not my problem. I would still go and visit my cousins. I'd still go to my aunt's house. She'd kiss me. She'd cook for me. It was all good. She would never mention my grandmother though. And my grandmother wouldn't mention her. Sometimes, you know, the old ladies were different, man. They took it hard. But, you know, after 2-3 months, you know, somehow or another there was a function and they got over it. And then they'd kind of unify and then they'd all criticize us, you know what I'm saying? So, but it was all love, you know what I'm saying? So the Orishas are kind of the same thing, man. Leave those people alone. Like, they have their own beef. Don't get involved. But that doesn't apply to us, you know what I'm saying? But anybody can crown anybody. Oshun can crown Shango, Shango can crown Oshun, Obadala can crown Agayu. I mean, if you look, every Orisha had problem with every Orisha, you know? Babaluaye cursed everybody. Oshun cursed everybody. Ogun cut everybody's head off. 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 murdered everybody. So none of us are compatible with each other. But we all have certain things in common that facilitate us being able to initiate each other. So Shango can crown anybody. Child of Shango can crown anybody and be crowned by anybody. Orisha is Orisha. Now, in Nigeria, where they didn't go through this huge, you know, exodus from one continent to the other, and they were able to maintain lineages where, you know, you go to like, I don't know, the land of Ota, where, you know, like the Shango priesthood is huge and super intact, you know. You're able to initiate somebody into Shango with just Shango priests being there, you know. Here, it's a little more difficult. It's not that we don't have that many Shangos over here, but maybe in your spiritual house, we're identified as having to initiate into Shango, and everybody in that house is a child of Oshun. Palante, bro. It's not an issue, you know. And anybody that says it does, you got to read a little bit more. You got to study, because if that's the case, Obatala can't crown anybody. Obatala and the 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗶, they cursed his hands on the shell. So, and everybody says, no, Obatala can crown everybody. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 can crown everybody. They all had beef with each other. It was just we choose to focus on more Jerry Springer episodes than others. You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay,
it's fine. No.
So we need some clarification on something here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So someone said that 𝗃𝗏𝗏 needs to be given as first steps in religion versus 𝘃cie.
Okay.
Can you clarify on that?
Who said that? Did they provide a name?
I don't have a name here.
Well, lucky for the person, they didn't provide their name, because that's completely erroneous and incorrect. And whoever said that needs to study. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was not on Earth before 𝘃𝗏𝗃 arrived on Earth. And then the funny thing about our 𝘃𝗏𝗃 icon, sir or ma'am, is that it has a rock on top of it. The rock that is given in the Olorisha context is nothing more than an extension of the rock that's placed on the head of the 𝘃𝗀 given by us, the Babalaos. So 𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗏 is there, even if his name is 𝘃𝗀 at that moment, because there is no 𝘃𝗀 without 𝗃𝗀 or 𝗃𝗀 without 𝘃𝗀. That's in the Odu Irete Queda. So for anybody to say that the first step is receiving an ota of 𝗃𝗀 is erroneous, because 𝘃𝗀 was on earth before anybody. So I'm not sure what they're referring to, because when you look at the Odu of 𝗃𝗀𝗋, the first two deities to make it down to earth successfully were 𝘃𝗀 and Orunmila. And what Orunmila did was, the first thing he did when he got on earth, we're talking about the first incarnations of human life. He got there, he took his rooster and he fed it to 𝘃𝗀. So 𝗃𝗀 wasn't even on the scene yet. The spirituality of 𝗃𝗀 wasn't even on the scene yet, other than that which was within 𝘃𝗀. This is all in the Odu of 𝗃𝗀𝗋. So maybe they haven't read the first sign of Ifa yet. So I don't know. But the rock, and this is the problem, is a lot of people just got here yesterday. But since I've been involved in, just seeing the religion my whole life and being around people that have been in this religion before I was born, the rock of 𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗏 was usually given around the time when you were going to initiate into Orisha, because at that point is where 𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗏 or 𝗃𝗀𝗃 is going to go through his ita process formally. So that's when you would get the rock, because technically in the Orisha process is where 𝘃𝗀 became an Orisha known as 𝗃𝗀𝗃. So there's really no point of providing that extension of rock before the Orisha process, because the 𝘃𝗀, which is also a 𝗃𝗀 given by us, the Babalaos, is applicable to everything. The only reason that that rock even exists is because someone interpreted somewhere that the 𝘃𝗀 we give has ingredients and things that aren't compatible with certain, aspects of the process of Orisha, which is completely erroneous as well. But we do it because we're trying to have one less conversation, with people who haven't studied. So it's just to kind of, not interrupt the flow, but completely erroneous.
Okay.
Completely incorrect.
All right. Well, do you have any frequently asked questions that you normally see that we didn't cover? Or
I'm gonna touch on another one, because I've been noticing there's a thing going on now, because I find out about things through TikTok now and Facebook, and God, I wouldn't dare watch CNN at this point. Nothing against CNN, but just news in general. There's this big thing now with the Orisha Olokun within the Lukumi Afro-Cuban context. And there's this new theme now, or fad, where people are saying that the ashes have to be taken out in the Orisha Olokun Aganaeri ceremony. Once again, humble opinion, completely erroneous, because to be able to, or have the obligation to, take out ashe, right? That is in the Odu, and we've talked about this, that's in the Odu Baba Shemeji, or Baba Shemeji, where a certain great aspect of the concept of ashe first manifested. And the ashes were removed and presented ceremonially to the Orisha so that the muscular mass or meat could be consumed, because it was compatible for humans. So in that sign, they'd kill the rooster, they'd fry it, they'd eat it, and they noticed that, even the healthiest of food wasn't hitting them right. Divination was performed, Oshemei was revealed, where Ifa said that the parts that you guys are throwing out have to be prepared and given to the Orisha. And they were like, but we fed the Orisha already. He said, no, the issue is, the Orisha ate there to be born, but to be able to go to the process of ita and speak, they need a snack. So when you look at the Olokun Aganaeri process, we don't offer usually a four-legged animal, and even if it is offered, certain things aren't done to be able to facilitate an ita, and acheses are offered because of ita. So I wanted to touch on that as well, because you see online a lot of people like to point fingers and say, I'm right, this is right, that's right, but no one mentions a sign. And we're really getting to a point within Ifa where we don't have time for people who don't have the information to corroborate what they're saying, especially if they're trying to critique somebody else. So I implore you, if you are going to say anything about Ifa, Orisha, or anything related within ATR, please study first. please have credentials and please have information to prove your point, because we are not taking anything at face value no more. And I think this channel has really ushered that in, where people are not, you know, just digesting things anymore. Like, you got to prove it to me. Like Baba Joseph, he gives a sign and a story with everything he says. What do you got? And if you don't have it, get it. If you don't want to get it, get out the way. You know what I'm saying? So,
love it.
That's my rant.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think this episode has been a lot of information.
It's been enlightening.
I'm surprised this wasn't a member show.
we gotta give it to the masses sometimes, man. I look at the numbers going up. We'll be at 50K soon, bro. Not to you know, point out the obvious.
I'm sure by the time this episode's released, we'll probably be at 50.
Yeah, it's just so humbled and so thankful. So many people, and you know what's really promising, Phil, is that it's people that, apart from the people that just watch us because, you know, they just want to, you know, nitpick at us. Like, the majority of those people that have subscribed are logic-seeking, logic-having, intelligent, profound, philosophical human beings. And for them to be focused on us and growing with us and, you know, interacting with us is so humbling, because their opinion matters. So
yeah, just a shout out to everybody who has recently joined us. If you are a new member,
thank you,
or a new subscriber,
thank you so much.
Just say hi in the chat so we know that you know that you're new.
Yeah, throw it up, definitely. And speaking of members,
yeah, that's right. You guys are in for a treat. All right, folks. Okay, so if you're wondering what this music is about, that means A, you're probably a really new subscriber, but B, we have a membership program that offers all types of perks for those who join. How do you join? Hit that little button under this video, and you have access to 3 separate tiers, and each tier offers its own different perks. So we're going to show some love to the people that show love to you.
Yep.
All right, here we go to the VIPs. We got Juju Ogunda Yakun.
Thank you, Juju.
We got 𝗃𝗵𝗿𝗃.
Okay.
We got 𝗃𝗵𝗿𝗃 Amanda.
Thank you so much.
We got the Anomaly.
Shout out.
All right, we got some super fans here. We got Kenya Hutton.
Thank you, Kenya.
We got Boricano.
Oh man, a lot of OGs.
Yep, and celebrating 14 months as a super fan, Lovely K.
Oh, thank you so much. Definitely, guys, you are the best part of our channel. If you're in the membership program and know somebody that can gain some value, be sure to let them know about it. Couple closing thoughts. Botanicacandlesandmore.com is up and running for all your service and product needs. We ship. Check out the podcast on audio if you're unable to catch us here on YouTube. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.